Good morning. You're joining me on a very rainy and foggy Saturday morning. It is November 20th and it has been cold and snowing and raining, and I have a lot of projects to share today. So we're going to go ahead and start with what I'm wearing. This was an FO in last episode's podcast, but today I'm wearing it, and I didn't have FO photos at that time, so I couldn't show it in its full glory since it is gigantic, and that is my Lift Your Spirits shawl by Mandobug. This was originally a mystery crochet along that started in September, and it made this really fun ghost shawl, and today I decided to wear it as more of like a traditional wrap it around that way, I guess, and then bring the ends around the front, and definitely works as a very big, like, comfortable shawl as well. I do have some ghosts that are dangling down on the front, but it almost can kind of look like a regular triangle shawl in a way. It just kind of has some extra ends sticking out, so I think it definitely can be worn as like a year-round piece. I was thinking I probably wasn't going to wear it much after Halloween, but I'm actually really liking the way this is looking, so might have to bring that into my wardrobe. It is very bulky because I did do the large size, but that is to be expected because it is massive. So there was a ghost. Anyway, I will put a photo here so that you can see how it turned out. I paired this with a fun Halloween dress that I have, and I absolutely love the look, and I am definitely looking forward to wearing it again next year. Jumping into FOs, I have quite a bit of them, and I actually kind of had to hold back. I was supposed to podcast last weekend, but I usually do it on Saturdays while my husband is at work, and last weekend he happened to have it off, so I decided I was going to take advantage of having him home for the whole weekend, and we got like errands taken care of, and we got to just spend some more time together than we normally do. So that was really nice, and I pushed my podcast a week, and I could have had 2 more FOs, but I kind of slowed down on them just so I had a good mix of FOs and whips to share with you today. So first up is my autumn doodle cowl. This was, I think I was just about done with it last episode because I entered it for the cowl that ended on October 31st, I believe. So not a whole lot more to add, I suppose, but I wanted to show it anyway. Make sure it's right side up. So it started in this dot section, and then I moved into my hearts, this fun leaf section, and then we have our acorns and leaves, a fun little pattern, pumpkins, because I couldn't not have pumpkins, another pattern, more leaves. I love that section. And then another little doodle before I picked back up and did more dots. So I love this cowl. I've been wearing it quite a bit. I think I could have gone down a needle size because I'm pretty sure my gauge is still a little bit too big. I did the Autumn Doodle Cup Cozy as my swatch, and then proceeded to go down a needle size based off of that, but I think I could have gone down more than what I did. So, all part of learning. It just means it's a little wider than it should have been, but I think it's just like an inch, maybe 2 inches wider. I can't remember for sure off the top of my head, but I might not have mentioned that in my Ravelry either. I don't know if I put the dimensions. I did mention that I would size down if I make something like this again, but I don't think I gave. I'll need to remember to add that because I think that would be helpful. But anyway, I did the double-sided version versus the single side hack. So I have this really thick infinity loop cowl that just slips over my head, and I just love it so much. I made it fall themed because I had a lot of other Halloween projects going on. But honestly, I want to make more of these. Maybe if I can figure out someone to gift it to. Because I don't think I'd want another one for myself, but I would love to make another one. Yeah, I love this project so much. Every time I look at it, it just makes me happy, and that's what it should be about. So I'm really pleased with the way my colors ended up playing out. I was a little worried about balancing everything and having enough yarn, but I actually have quite a bit left over. Well, a decent amount left over, I should say. I couldn't have just I bought 2 skeins of each color, and I couldn't have just gotten away with 1 skein without maybe if I would have done colors that I didn't really want to do together, and I was kind of already doing that on that version. This version, sorry. Now it's upside down. But I actually have enough that I think I could do a hat, which means that I will take better measurements of this and try to size down accordingly so that the hat actually fits and doesn't end up being too big, because this is much more flexible with getting away with being a bigger size. So yeah, I love my color palette. I'm really pleased with the mix of the tweed and the non-tweed, and I definitely want to make a coordinating hat so I can have a set. That's not going to happen anytime soon, but I should have enough yarn to do it, I think. So that is my cowl. Next up, one of my said Halloween projects is done in time for Emma O'Brien's Halloween knit-along that she was doing, and that is my Betwixt shawl, and this is her pattern. Make sure I put it up there, and I'll have to put up a photo of this one too because it's also ginormous. It really blocked out and became this beautiful like drapey shawl. But there is the mosaic part of the shawl that I spent most of the time working on. And then my black, I'm pretty sure I think I was in the black section when I last filmed, but I don't think I was very far. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but like I said, I'll put in a photo. Those are my skulls. There's a little face right there, and the rest of the lace. And this is the black sparkly yarn that I hand dyed. You can see it really well there. It's just so shimmery. For my original plan for this shawl, which was with the 12 mini skeins and 1 full skein. So this part was all supposed to be mini skeins, and I decided that I wanted those mini skeins to play next to each other and not with each other like these are. And these 2 yarns are actually yarns that I bought at my first fiber festival that I knew I wanted to use together. And so I did a swap once the pattern was revealed earlier in like, I don't know, September-ish, maybe October, and switched to these yarns that I had on hand because I wanted them to be in a Halloween project, but kept my black sparkly skein. And fun fact, I can't remember if I had this decided the last time I recorded, but I decided what I'm going to use that set of mini skeins for. TL Yarn Crafts Juniper Cowl, this is completely off topic, has the colors that go boom, 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 boom next to each other, and it calls for many, many skeins. I have more than what it calls for. I think it's like 10, but I can make that modification. And I have enough left over of the sparkly black that I will be able to still use all 13 colors together, and that's the project I'm going to do it with. So again, not this year, but very excited. I am very happy that I changed my plan. I don't always like changing my plan. I can be stubborn and just go through it anyway, but I'm really glad that I switched to this variegated orange and this zebra purple yarn by Desert Panda Fiber Arts, and then kept my skulls in this solid black because I think I prefer the look of using the solid yarn for the skullies. I know there were plenty of people who did like variegateds for this edging, but I would have either used like a white for like the skull part of it, you know, like an off-white I should say, or I knew this black would be perfect. So that is my betwixt shawl. I didn't make any modifications, I just followed the pattern as is. I did not gauge swatch though, I believe I just used the needles that the pattern called for. Although I know the first pattern I made of hers, I started working it up with the needles called for, and it ended up sizing down, I think, because I saw that mine was going to be too big. I mean, rough estimate, just, you know, I didn't wet block or anything, but as I did a couple rows, I kind of measured loosely what it would be, and it was too big. So I can't remember if I went ahead and sized down with this or if I stayed with the actual needle size, but I'm pretty sure this ended up being bigger. Not that I've measured it yet, but I was supposed to have, I think, just a little bit left over of the orange color, and I used all of it. And it was at that point that I figured my gauge is probably using more yarn than it should have. So, but that's okay. It's just more to wrap around. Again, it's a shawl, so I wasn't super concerned about the sizes. I've already worn it to work. I've been trying to wear all of these to work because I do have to dress up a little more. Not like suit, tie, dress, all that super like professional business attire, but definitely professional attire. So I have been taking advantage of my handmaids and adding them to my outfits to just kind of classy them up a little bit, I guess. And then my last FO is kind of a half FO because this one I have to share in chunks. And that is another Traveling Seasons square for my Traveling Seasons Afghan, which is this year's Lion brand hosted crochet along. I think they also do a knit along. And they partnered with Whistle and Wool, who then also, they're like the hosts of it, and then they worked with 11 other designers to create a bunch of different squares themed around the 4 seasons. And I have more videos on this on my channel, but essentially I hand dyed the yarn that I'm using for these squares because I wanted to pick colors that meant that had like a tie to the seasons for memories or associations that I had with them growing up. And I just couldn't find a pre-dyed set of colors that I liked how they looked together. It actually took me quite a while to decide on this color palette. And so I'm currently on the fall squares, which I did this like semi-solid orange. I'm hoping that's the right terminology for this because it's definitely not all one color. It's definitely a very subtle shift in like more orangey tones and more like browner orange tones. It's all definitely still very orange. Sorry, I'm saying definitely a lot. Very much orange all over, but it's definitely, there I go again, varying degrees. So this is the August square, I believe, and this was designed by TL Yarn Crafts, and I think it was called Falling Leaves, and this was a really fun stitch pattern to work up. I've done like my blanket behind me is a fall blanket. Like there's like leafy motifs that I did in this blanket. So it's kind of familiar with the concept because this stitch in particular is very similar in construction. But not quite. I'm pretty sure. Because this didn't leave the holes like that one does. So they're a little bit different, but same kind of concept where you're yarning over and dipping into different rows. And I love the square. Not that I'm biased or anything with fall being my favorite season, but yeah. I have one more fall square for September to do, and then we're into the last season. And let's see, I guess 2 of them would have been released already, because there would have been October, November, and then December gets released on the 1st of the next month. And then that will be all the squares. And I know that even though I'm close to finishing the squares, I will have quite a bit to do when it comes to figuring out the best way to get these all sewn together because I have some variation in my square sizes and I need to come up with a good way to overcome that. But I really want all of them to be done first so I can really compare their measurements. I'm trying really hard to get them somewhere between like 10, 10 and a quarter, 10 and a half. But some of them are like 10 and 3/4 and 11 inches. Most of them are pretty square. I've had to do some adjustments, like I had to add an extra repeat to this square. But this is actually my smallest square, so I ended up not adding. You're supposed to go across the top and the bottom, but because I'd already added the repeat to get me an extra inch, I added to the sides only, and I might have to go back and add. I probably will do more rows around. I haven't decided yet. That, like I said, I don't really want to make a decision on that until I see how all of the others size out. That is another square. So we're making steady progress. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the fact that I'm still working on that. So now that we're done with the FOs, it is time to move into whips. So I will start with the usual Tidings to You by Amy Gunderson. Just grabbing it over here. Have it the right way. And let's see, I figured out how many rows we had left the other day, because as you probably know, if this is not your first time here, this is part of Jimmy Bean's 2020 craft event. So 2021 is going to be starting very shortly. It's been out for a while. Opening it will start December 1st. So we're quite a bit behind, but that's okay. We still have like 100 rows left to do. So not gonna finish by the end of the year, but you know what? We're doing it. So this is where we're at now. We have this really pretty like caramel color. We just started a new color last week, so I only have a couple rows there. And then that's kind of how those colors are laying out. I think there are 2 more big lace sections. Either 1 or 2 more. Can't remember, because it's like a smaller section and a larger lace section, and so then we're entering a smaller section, and there'll be at least 1 more, and I'm pretty sure that's not the last one, so there must be 2 more at least. So that is moving along nicely. This was a really fun section to work on. In fact, I think we whipped through this in like 2 to 3 weeks. My mom and I knit this together on Saturdays, usually for a couple of hours, and that's about all we do to it on a weekly basis. So it's just kind of incrementally being worked on. But this was a really nice, quick, repetitive lace stitch that was pretty much a 4-row pattern repeat. And yeah, we blasted through that. That was hands down the quickest lace section we have gone through. I apologize for the lighting that's continually shifting between super blue and then normal. Again, I think my camera is trying to make up for the fact that it is very blue outside. In fact, I am recording as early as I can this morning, but it just was dark for a while. So here we are. It's still not as light out as I would like it to be, but I think it's going to be pretty cloudy today. I'm just glad that the lighting is looking this good, because in here it's pretty dark. So I'm impressed with what my camera is doing here, but I do see that it keeps shifting in color, and that might be annoying, so I'm sorry, but it is what it is. I'm working on some holiday gifts. I will share a couple of them just because I know they're people, I don't think they even know that I have a podcast, so I feel pretty safe sharing here on this platform and being okay with that. There are a couple one that I started this morning that I will not be sharing until it's done. and then a second one that I probably will play it safe and not share it just in case. But this is my moose mug cozy. The pattern is by Blackstone Designs, and this released last year and I loved it so much, and I knew immediately who I wanted to make it for, but then things just got crazy, and then I figured I would try again this year. Is this not the cutest thing you've ever seen? It's a little moose wearing a plaid scarf. So there's stuff going around only because I'm currently working on sewing a liner, and I decided I actually was looking for a plaid that was using red and black, but Walmart didn't have that, and I really just wanted to get a fabric so I could get this finished up, and I thought this would still look really fun and festive. So plaid it is, red and green, and I like it, so hopefully the recipient will like it as well. But I've used my little sewing clips to kind of fold over the edges and keep it attached to my cozy so that I can just hand stitch it around, and then it'll keep my cozy from stretching in the future, which will be really nice because I don't want it to get too big to fit around a mug. I did have to make some modifications. I was pretty confident that I had met gauge, so I'm not really sure why my cozy ended up being short. So if you look carefully, this way I'm working rows, and this way I'm working rows this way. So basically I just picked up along the edge and then went back and forth and faked it essentially, because I was not going to pull it apart and start over. So it's the back anyway, so I don't care. The front is the cutest. I'd already had the face put on and everything, so I couldn't like recenter anything. I was like waiting for the buttons to arrive, and I was like, I'll just throw this around a mug to see if it works, and sure enough, it wasn't long enough. And I didn't think to measure it when I started working it up because I had met gauge. So I don't know. This is extra fabric that I'll tuck away once I know that I'm covered here. I've already had to redo part of this because I had too much fabric and I don't want to trim anything off just in case. But essentially it just wraps around. There's a little tab that you can put around the button, or if you need to tighten it, I did the 2-button option so that there are some options for changing what it wraps around. Like, it's not just one dimension in a way, because you can do this one, which is the standard, but some mugs might be a little skinnier, and that can just help tighten that up a little bit. It is cinched at the bottom. Cinched isn't the right word, but it's attached there. So like, you stitch your cup into it and then button it up, which I did not realize from the photos that this was there. I thought it was just a rectangle that buttoned together, and I was debating on leaving that off, but I think that helps, like, not necessarily hold it up, but I think it was a good feature to add, so I left it. I couldn't find these, like, the pattern calls them a couple different things, but I couldn't find them in the smaller size for the nostrils, so I just decided to do no nostrils. I was thinking about needle felting them and the eyes actually, but that just sounded like it was a recipe for having uneven things, and I decided that I would just worry about the eyes. And with the snout being 3D anyway, you still get the look. But anyway, I think it's cute. I did a different color for the antlers because I just thought it looked better than the color of the original pattern. And then I just stuck with the typical buffalo plaid color scheme for the scarf. Then I did two little tails and added some extra yarn down there. Sorry, that's my thread. To make it look like a fringy scarf, and I just think it's so cute. So I'm excited to have that finished up so I can give it to the recipient and I hope she likes it. I think she will, but hopefully it fits. I just hope it fits the mugs. That's really all that's worrying me. It fits around the mug I have, but mugs can vary, so fingers crossed. Let's see, I guess I have one more whip to share, and also it's almost finished. So I hadn't even started this when I last recorded, but I had applied for the test. It's a test knit, and I was feeling pretty good about getting it because I hadn't heard yet. I was waiting to hear back. And I don't think I'd even ordered yarn yet, but I had researched what I would use if I was selected, because the window was the testing period was open long enough that I was going to be able to order the yarn that I needed because I didn't have anything on stash. So this is the Linen Blend Cowl by Yellow Ribbon Crafts, and this is going to be another gift that I'm making for the recipient whose favorite colors I've been told are black and blue. So I bought the blue. This is Knit Picks Muse. It's a single ply. Look at that, because this texture is glorious. And so this is the color Visionary. And it's almost a semi-solid, but you can definitely see there's variation. So it's, maybe I meant to say it's almost a tonal. I still really get those words mixed up. I'm sorry. But there's some variation in that blue for sure. So there's that. And I didn't like the black that they had in stock. I wanted to make sure there was enough contrast, and I wasn't convinced by the online photo that it would. So, but what I did do, they had Muse also in Bear Yarn, and I ordered it and used the same recipe to dye that I dyed the black sparkly yarn for my betwixt shawl for this Muse, and got the most gorgeous, completely solid. Like, I am absolutely confident there is no variation in that black because I did a super saturated dye mixture and I let it sit in that dye and absorb with no acid in cold water, just so that it could penetrate every fiber. So that is exactly what it did. I'm so glad, because I was worried that it wasn't going to be, with it being a single ply, I was worried that the middle was still going to be, like, this is a super pretty effect, but with this pattern and with the way it fades in and out, I wanted to make sure this black was as solid as I could possibly get it, and I succeeded. So I love this texture. I could not put it down. In fact, the first check-in for the test was yesterday, pretty sure, and I'm already bound off. I gotta measure it, and if it's not to size quite, I'm gonna block it, but if it is to size, I think I'm gonna not block it. But I do need to weave in my ends, so. But I wanted to not have it soaking wet for when I record it, because I wanted to show it, so. The bind off was really cool too. You like bind off in pattern. So I'm pretty pleased with the way, like, I just fell in love with it when I saw the test call on Yarn Pond. I haven't done very many tests this year. In fact, I think I've done 2, maybe 3. I'm trying to think. I think that's all I've done this year, but I couldn't say no to this, and I knew that I could make it as a gift for someone. That's kind of how I justified applying for the test. If I had a purpose for it, then I could make it. And I'm very pleased. And the pattern was pretty easy to follow. I so far don't have a whole lot to nitpick with it. I haven't done like a final go through the pattern for my own testing purposes. But no major issues so far, and it was a pretty easy pattern to follow. So definitely will recommend this once it comes out. I know the testing period doesn't end until sometime next month, so I don't know if the pattern, I'm assuming it will also be out next month, but I'm not sure. So anyway, that is the linen blend cowl, and I love it. So soft and squishy too. I'm glad that I went with a single ply. So that was my last whip, and now I am going to go a little bit into some other things that I want to share. I haven't had a whole lot of mail that hasn't been used in pretty recent projects, like my autumn doodle cowl. That was recent mail, but I was using it right away, so I just kind of incorporated it into the project. But my advent calendar did arrive yesterday. Well, I picked it up out of the mailbox yesterday. I think it arrived the day before. So last year and this year I've been lucky enough to get 2 advent calendars. One that I asked for Christmas for my husband, and then of course the Jimmy Beans Craft Vent one was one that I asked for a Christmas present from my family. And that ended up working out because my mom works on it with me. So we're getting that again. Ooh, on my camera, sorry. We're doing that again this year. We've already picked out that we're going to do the knit pattern, and I think we're both going to do the pink color version. So we'll have that. It's fun. Last year I didn't realize that my dad was going to get her one as well. And so we both opened up all the packages on Christmas because at that point the whole Advent opening is over. And so we just sat at the table. She had one color version and I had the other, and we just opened everything out, laid out all the colors, marveled at everything, and then put everything back. And now as we're working through it, we're opening everything again, and it's like a second surprise. And so I know that's what we'll do for this year too. We'll open all of the little bags on Christmas. I mean, the colors aren't a surprise for that one. It's not a mystery for the pattern or this color scheme. But there are some fun extras that are in the Advent. I guess I can only speak for 2020, but like we just opened up December 18th's bag from last year's, and it had a little, like, I don't know if it's actual leather, but like the little fabric tag that you can sew onto projects. And so I definitely want to add that on to the wrap when it's done. I think it says Jimmy Beans 2020 Craft Vent too, so it's kind of fun that it like marks it as that project, so that years down the road we have a way to remember it by. So we will have that coming in, and once we finish that, we'll continue knitting Saturdays together through Zoom on 2021's Craft Vent. But then my other one that is a mystery arrived. I'm doing this year's Hickory Lane Fiber Co. Disney Villains versus Heroes. Heroes versus Villains, sorry, I got that mixed up. I haven't purchased from Hickory Lane recently, but she's probably one of the first dyers that I followed on Instagram, and I have purchased her yarn before. And I still, to this day, my favorite colorway of all time is dyed by this dyer. So I had her on my list last year when I started compiling Advent dyers for thinking about this year, and I'm doing it again this year, thinking about next year. And I don't like doing the same things twice. Like, I really enjoyed the Harry Potter Advent that I got last year from Dragon Horde Designs, Dragon Horde Yarn, Dragon Horde Yarn, I think, and Yarn Cafe Creations. They team up and do Harry Potter themed Advents. They go through the different years of Hogwarts, so I did last year because I was year 4, and that was my favorite Harry Potter book. So that's the one I picked last year, and I made a wrap with it, and I love it. It's beautiful. Not colors that I would put together, but I think that's the point of an Advent, honestly. It's just having a set that you don't know what to expect from, and you just kind of work your way through something, and I think that's so fun. So I love it, but I didn't want to do that same like concept and dire this year. I wanted to experience a different one. So the same for next year. I already have a list of people that I would probably look at next year for Advents. And this year it was Hickory Lane Fiber Co. So I'm going to try and get this. It'll be backwards, but she has like a cute little graphic that she made for this Advent. And it has Jafar in the background and Sleeping Beauty in the foreground. It's like kind of cut out. Hopefully that focuses kind of. I know the tape's in the way. So I'm not obviously opening them yet, but I have opened the box, and I know some people have different definitions of what they want spoiled. So if you don't want to see anything about the inside of the box, this is your warning to look away. I'll say something again when I put it down, but I did want to show the inside of the box. I'm going to do, I think, a video of this process this year. Last year I kind of just like photographed everything, and I'm not really sure if I've ever showed anything because I didn't want to spoil it during the thing, obviously. Although I did, I think I posted my stories the day of sometimes. But like once everything was open, I took a picture of everything. And that was kind of fun to do, having them all laid out next to each other. But I also didn't have a pattern in mind last year, and this year I do. So I'm going to work on it as I go, and I think I'm going to do kind of like a vlog type. I don't know. I don't even know how long of a video it would end up being, but just something that's basically like work through an Advent with me. I probably won't do a whole lot of talking. It'll probably be mostly visual, but I haven't fully decided yet. Honestly, I just had this idea last night. So that's in the beginning stages of planning. I'm going to lift this up now, so if you don't want to see the box, again, no yarn or anything has been opened. It's just the packaging of the Advent, but just in case, go ahead and look away. So I had to open it. Last year, I don't even remember if I opened it until the 1st of December, but I opened the box this year. There's really pretty like iridescent packing paper. Not all of it's iridescent, but you can see some of the iridescence in there. Everything's labeled. It is a 24, I think she did 12 and 24, but I did the 24 mini skein set, and there is a full skein down here. This is the card that came with it. I guess I'm not really spoiling this. I don't know. It's up to you. She did, I realize now, she did post videos of her packing boxes. So do with that what you will, but I figured it couldn't hurt to warn people. That is the card. And then there's some information in the back about what's in it, and it includes the list of what everything's inspired by, which she also previously published. So for example, she's doing 24 days, and on the first day it is the villain? Nope, hero. So the first day is the hero of said Disney thing, and day 2 is the villain of that same movie, and I think is in this case what she's working with. I mean, is Disney. So like, for example, December 1st and December 2nd are based on Hocus Pocus. So on the first day, it's going to be the hero, and on the second day, it's going to be the villain. And then it goes through a whole bunch of different movies. We have Coco, The Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, Nightmare Before Christmas. So I'm very excited. I got the sock weight yarn, I believe. I should probably double check that considering I've already picked out my pattern. But I'm pretty sure it was a sock weight. I'm going to close the box up now so you can look if you didn't want to. And the pattern, I was torn between 2 garment patterns. I knew I wanted to do a garment this year because I really wanted to do one last year, but I had my husband help me pick out a pattern, and he liked, well, we both liked the wrap. I gave him like, I showed him a handful to choose from, and that's the one he chose. So I loved the pattern that I used last year, but this year, like, nope, I'm going to do a garment this year. And I was pretty torn between 2 patterns evenly, so I put it up to a vote in my Instagram stories, and I got quite a decent response, and the Advent sweater was the one that won. So that is a pattern by Helene Knits. I'll have to put, I usually put the designer, you know, along the bottom anyway, but I'll also put a photo here so you can see what it looks like. It's a really pretty garment construction using the different mini skeins, and it looks to use the yarn, like the amount of minis that I have in my box and the amount of yardage that's included in those minis. And it does also utilize a full main color skein, and it goes up to my size without needing extra additional yarn. So I will have to be very, very intentional with my gauge and my swatching, which I try to be anyway, but this is going to be much more critical because I could potentially run out of yarn, and I think I'm going to have to make some modifications. So that is that. That is a project I'm looking forward to for December. I have many things that I'm working on right now, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up as the yarn part. I do have one more thing I want to share because it is a hobby that is also taking some time right now, and that is my quilt that I'm working on. If you follow me on Instagram, over the past couple of years, I've every once in a while posted in my stories some progress images of my quilt. It is a dragon quilt. I saw this on display at a craft store when I was shopping with my mom in 2019. It was like Christmas 2019, we were home, and saw this quilt like fully quilted up, hanging in their shop, and they were selling kits. And I don't have a sewing machine. I have made a quilt before, but it had been probably 10 to 15 years at that point, because I made some with my mom when I was a kid. So it'd been a very long time, but everything went out the door, and I bought the kit for this quilt. So I bought the pattern, and I bought all of the beautiful fabric that they had. They had two color options, and one was the one that I went, which is the blue one, and then they also had a red one, and I of course had to go for the blue/teal version of the quilt because how could I not? And then I bought the kit because I wasn't sure at that point. There are other places that sell it that I found out later, but I didn't know it at the time, so I bought the kit, I bought the fabric, and then January I bought the sewing machine, and I practiced working on a couple of different things first, including that, I haven't pulled it up in a while, but the really cute little pumpkin project bag that I show every once in a while. If you remember that was one of my first test projects on my sewing machine, just to kind of get the feel of it, and also the feel of sewing in general, because a lot of the times I hand sew stuff, and it had been years since I'd used a sewing machine. So that happened, and then time passed, and I decided it was finally time to start the quilt. I was kind of scared because I have had issues. I'm not very good at cutting fabric, and part of me doesn't care enough to be more careful with cutting fabric. So I was just kind of dreading the actual start of it, but I cut the fabric. You'll see in some of the photos, it has panels in it, so not every block was intricately quilted and pieced together, which means the quilt top came together pretty quickly. In fact, I think I did the whole thing in a couple of weekends, if I'm being honest, outside of the mitered border, because that I also put off because it made me mad and it didn't line up, and I had never done one before. So it went time out, and then last fall, I bought the backer fabric, and agonized about how I wanted that to look and what fabric could I possibly do. Like this quilt to me is like, it's gonna be like, eventually I want to hang it up and display it on a wall, but right now we're renting and I don't, it's massive. I think it's like 8 feet tall. I think it's like 72 inches wide by 96 inches tall, if I remember that correctly. I can't even fit it anywhere on the floor in our apartment for when I was like trying to see how everything laid out and get things pieced together and make sure my backer was big enough and make sure the batting was big enough. Like, I kind of had to do some eyeballing because it barely fits the quilt top itself in the floor of our living room, which is the biggest floor space we have. And then once I added the backer and the batting, which has to be longer than the quilt top for quilting purposes, didn't fit anymore. So yeah, so I figured out what I want to do with the backing fabric, and I'm just so pleased with the choice that I like, the fabric that I was able to find at my local Joann, and keeping it simple, but I think it was effective because it was so wide that I basically, if I didn't want to piece a backer together, I would have had to use, they have like special backing fabric that you can use for really wide quilts, but they don't have a whole lot of options even online. It just, a lot of them were basically solid fabrics, which was fine because honestly no one's gonna probably see the backer of my quilt, and except for when I'm showing it off, you know, here and when I'm finished with it. But I know what the backer is, and that was important to me. So I found 2 different fabrics that I pieced together, and I'll insert photos so you'll see. Again, they're kind of crappy photos, but this really pretty galaxy fabric that is sparkly, and I'm getting sparkles everywhere. But it's the same, pretty much the exact same color scheme as the front of my quilt, which I could not have asked for a more perfect like galaxy colored fabric, because the teal is spot on and the blues are spot on. And then like it's paneled or surrounded by panels of this like, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like a snakeskin type of look, but it's like scaly black fabric. And it's not textured, it's not like the leathery kind of vinyl snakeskin fabric that you can sometimes see. It's like cotton. It's just printed onto it, and I was like, dragon scales. I don't care, you can't convince me otherwise. This is dragon skin. So perfect backing choices. Batting, you know, was its own thing. And then the next task was finding a quilter. And I didn't have a whole lot of local options available to me, and I certainly wasn't going to quilt it by hand. So I found someone online, and she basically took my quilt, and I kind of told her what I was concerned about with quilting. I didn't want the panels to just be quilted in a pattern over them because I knew that was going to drown out the images. And I got it back a couple weeks ago, and she freaking nailed the quilting. Like, I was basically squealing when I opened up the package. It's perfect. So the reason I'm saying all of this and going on and on and on about my quilt is because it is almost done. It has been 2 years, almost exactly, you know, about a month out or so, but 2 years in the making, mostly because of my own procrastination. But I'm working on the binding now because I'd already picked out the binding that I wanted to use. And I'm almost halfway done with the binding, and then it'll be done, and I am thrilled with it. It was going to be a special piece. It was quite a bit of money that I invested into it, so I knew from the beginning that if I was going to do this, I wanted everything to be right, and I didn't want to just get to the back and go, oh, well, you know what, I can do a solid because no one's going to see it and it'll be cheaper to do it that way, and it probably would have been. But I wanted everything to be super intentional every step of the way. So again, if I haven't already, I'll put in photos, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it because I am getting so close. I haven't really shared a whole lot about it. I certainly haven't shared it on my feed anywhere. Again, I have story updates that I've put up, and I have it all saved in the highlights on Instagram, but that's about the only place I've talked about it until recently. So I just figured I'd share that here because it is taking quite a bit of time in the most recent week or two, because I've been pretty much spending my evenings, like this cowl became my at work project for my lunch breaks and in the mornings before I clock in. And then my quilt has been my at home project that I have been just kind of, because the binding you have to hand stitch on. I think there are other techniques to not hand stitching it on, but that's the one that I learned and that's the one that I'm doing. So it is by nowhere near perfect. By no means perfect. But I'm so pleased with it and I love it so much and I'm so excited to have it done and to show it off. I need to come up with a good way to get photos of it because again, it is massive. I can't take a picture of it anywhere in my apartment, but we're also entering snow, wet, muddy season. I don't really want to take it outside and get photos, so we'll see. I'll figure something out, but in the meantime, you'll just have to enjoy these lovely partial photos of just bits and pieces of this quilt. I might throw in a few from the process too, if you haven't seen them in my Instagram. Yeah, that's just an update on something that is non-fiber related, but still something that is very special to me and taking up time. So with that, I think I have chatted long enough. It has been almost an hour. And that's the longest I've gone on for a while, so we're gonna call it there. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions or have any thoughts about things you'd like to see from me, go ahead and put them in the comments below. I have information in the description about the patterns that I refer to, and everything on my Ravelry is up to date with what I'm working on. Of course, I do need to measure my autumn doodle cowl if I haven't already. But that is that. Thanks for joining me.